Under the pallid light of a swollen moon, the clearing seemed caught between two worlds, one of hushed shadows and the other of restless whispers. A single figure stood at its center, limbs slender and awkward, coat the color of fresh chestnuts. He snarled softly, lips pulled back to reveal teeth meant for grazing, not tearing. Yet the sound that tore through the night air was not a foal's plaintive neigh but a sharp, rattling bark, echoing, strangely discordant, against the ancient pines. He was born on a bitter spring morning, abandoned at the edge of a rocky outcrop. His first breath came not with the gentle nicker of a mother mare but with the rough rasp of cold wind through jagged stones. Starved for warmth, he collapsed beside a fallen log where Luna, the pack's matriarch, found him. Her coat was silver-flecked and her gait measured. Scars arched over lean flanks like faded badges of authority. When she nudged him awake, her eyes held neither fear nor disdain, only the fierce curiosity of a creature unafraid to redefine the bounds of family. From that moment, the foal's earliest memories were not of soft hay or the lulling rhythm of a mare's heartbeat. They were of fur brushing against his side, of canine bodies curling around him, and of playful nips that mistook his tail for a rabbit's twitch. His legs learned to stagger through damp underbrush, following the pack's sinuous path through bracken and fallen leaves. He learned that hunger could be satisfied not with sweet clover but with rabbits seized in moonlit hunts. He learned to bark in throaty desperation when the scent of fresh kill teased his nostrils. He learned loyalty and pack hierarchy, mimicking the way the younger wolves fell to their bellies at Luna's approach, how the elder siblings greeted one another with ritualized bows. His given name, Jareth, floated in his memory like a long-forgotten lullaby, uttered once by a distant mare whose ghostly imprint remained in the one rust-colored tuft of mane at his withers. Each dawn he searched the horizon for phantom hooves, for a mother's tender nuzzle, only to find the undulating silhouettes of wolves instead. He would run with them, lungs flaming, paws slapping the forest floor, until exhaustion pinned him beneath their protective circle. Then, wrapped in warmth and breath, he would dream of open prairies, of a soaring freedom that felt as elusive as a star. By his first winter, Jareth's bark had grown deep and resonant, echoing off ice-laden trunks and sending startled woodchucks scattering. The pack followed his lead as often as they tolerated it, drawn to the odd comfort his voice offered. The year's killing cold proved the crucible in which his identity fused. Hoofed innocence welded to lupin cunning. Yet a quiet turmoil kindled within him. Each time he glimpsed the sky's cold expanse, he longed for a voice that came from within, an unbroken, heartfelt whinny. He longed to know what it felt like to gallop across an open plain, to feel nimble hooves beat thunder into the earth. The wolves sensed his unease, but only Luna understood the weight of his divided spirit. In the thaw of spring, as rivulets danced through melting snow, Jareth stumbled upon Marlowe's trap. It lay half-hidden beneath a scatter of pine needles, a cruel contraption of iron and steel, jaws poised to snap shut on anything curious enough to disturb it. A rabbit's twitching shadow drew him near. Instinct honed by months of canine hunts urged him forward, and then the trap snapped shut with a clang that shattered morning's gentle hush. The echo reverberated through the valley, mingling shock and pain in a single, jagged note. Jareth leapt back, heart pounding so fiercely he feared it would burst free of his chest. But his paw, one delicate foreleg, was caught, each tooth of the iron teeth pressing into warm flesh. A distant howl split the air. Luna charged, fur ablaze with protective fury, and two siblings burst from cover. Together they tore at the trap, teeth and claws raking rust, but the iron would not budge. The wound gushed scarlet, and Jareth's bark carried a ragged note of terror he had never known. Marlowe emerged from shadows then, tall, gaunt, and dressed in leather stitched from 100 wilderness hunts. He moved with the confidence of a man who believed the wild existed to be conquered. The pack froze at his approach. Even Luna weighed her options before snarling low. Marlowe's eyes gleamed when he saw Jareth's trapped limb. He reached out with a gloved hand and touched the foal's flaring nostrils. "Well, well," he murmured, his voice as smooth as oiled iron. "What do we have here?" The pack bristled. Echo, Jareth's closest companion, bared her teeth in warning. But the man's gaze flicked to the injured paw, and a calculating grin curved his thin lips. A wolf or a horse? Perhaps both. He knelt, pried the jaws apart with impossible ease and plucked Jareth free. The foal collapsed, pain and relief swirling through him. Marlowe bent to inspect the leg, his fingers adept and unflinching, as though he'd dealt with 1,000 such wounds. His lips moved in silent dialogue with Echo and Luna, promising safety if they followed his lead. Jareth watched through blurred vision as the pack hesitated. Hunger, fear, loyalty, each pulled at their lean forms. At last, hunger and fear gave way to instinct. Echo shot forward in a dare, and the others flowed after. The man scooped Jareth into a leather hood lined with fleece. He carried him toward the distant rumble of a dusty road, where a battered truck waited. Jareth struggled, but the pain in his leg burned hotter than resistance. His new captor glanced back, eyes shadowed by brimmed hat. "We'll see whether this beast belongs to man or wolf." By the edge of the clearing, as first light bled through pines, Jareth caught the scent of horses, hay, sweat, and something utterly different from praise musk or lupin musk. He tried to neigh but instead barked, a harsh stutter that startled both man and pack. Echo's howl rippled through the air, a mournful dirge for a brother carried away. Luna's eyes met Jareth's for a fraction of a heartbeat. Something unspoken passed between them, a promise of return, a vow of remembrance. The truck's engine stuttered to life, and the last echoes of canine cries faded into the dawn. Jareth pressed his snout to the leather hood, longing to taste the wind, to feel grass beneath his hooves again. But he was moving away from all he had known, toward a fate uncharted, toward human hands that might heal or harm. The road stretched ahead, unknown and unforgiving, much like the questions that now warred within him. Who was he truly? Could he ever reconcile the barking within him with the horse beating in his chest? As the truck rattled over wooden bridges and winding trails, Jareth's mind flickered with memory, the warmth of Luna's flank, the thrill of a pack hunt, the lullaby of the wind through grass. He could almost feel the pulse of equine blood thrumming beneath his mane. And though pain lanced with every jolt, something else quickened, a spark of determination. The world beyond the pines beckoned, full of dangers he could not yet name, but also full of possibilities. If he could learn to speak the voice he was born with, perhaps he could find his place between pack and herd, between dog and horse. As the sun climbed higher, spilling gold across dew-soaked fields, the truck turned toward a distant town, its slanted rooftops visible through breaks in the forest. Jareth settled unsteadily on 3 legs, shadows of fear and hope dancing in his wide eyes. The journey he had begun as an accident of fate would demand more than mere survival. It would demand courage, compassion, and the courage to discover who he truly was. And somewhere beyond the rim of those receding pines lay a chapter yet unwritten, waiting for his ribcage to expand, his lungs to fill, and his heart to declare itself in a thunderous, undeniable neigh. No matter what lay ahead, the wild world would never forget the bark that sounded like a horse, or the horse that barked like a dog. And within that timeless paradox lay the key to his destiny. The dawn air pressed cool and damp against Jareth's flanks as the battered truck slowed to a halt at the edge of Marisol's stable. His heart hammered in his chest, shock and pain mingling with a fierce yearning for freedom. Marisol, a young woman whose sun-etched face held equal parts kindness and resolve, emerged from the barn with a lantern in one hand and a leather halter in the other. She paused when she saw the strange creature before her, a chestnut foal, 3 legs trembling, voice caught between bark and whinny. For a moment their eyes met, and in that hush Jareth sensed the promise of sanctuary. Marisol approached cautiously, every step measured to avoid startling him. "Easy there, boy," she murmured, voice soft as moss. Kneeling on the dewy ground, she offered her palm. Jareth pressed his nose against her fingers, tasting warmth and empathy. She worked quickly to free his trapped hoof from the makeshift hood, revealing fur stained with blood. With gentle hands she wrapped the leg in clean linen torn from her apron. Each tug of cloth drew a whimper from Jareth, but he remained still, trusting this human in a way he had never trusted their kind before. Behind her, 2 stable hands emerged, eyes wide at the sight of the barking foal. One, a burly man named Tom, scratched his beard. "Never seen the like," he said. "Looks part wolf, part horse." Echo, his canine sister, stood a few yards off in the forest's embrace, her eyes glinting with worry. Luna lingered near the tree line, regal despite exhaustion, her silver coat dulled by grime. Marisol raised a hand. "Give him space," she instructed. The men obeyed, retreating to the barn's threshold as Marisol guided Jareth inside. Within the dim warmth of the stall, hay crunched beneath Jareth's hooves. He nickered softly, a hesitant gesture of gratitude. Marisol filled a bucket with water and held it to his lips. He drank deeply, then lowered his head, eyes half closed. As the last stars faded, she whispered to the empty stall next door, "Echo, come on, girl." The pack sister stepped inside, tail low and wary. Jareth nuzzled her, and Echo responded with a gentle lick to his cheek, her cold nose forging a bridge between their worlds. While Marisol tended Echo's wound, a deep gash along her flank, Jareth's ear flicked at every creak and whisper of wind. He sensed Marlowe's presence in the faint rumble of the truck engine, now idling beyond the stables. Each breath carried a metallic tang of fear. Marisol glanced toward the open door and frowned. "Hold on, both of you," she murmured. She pulled the stall door closed, wedging a wooden bar across its frame. The act felt like a tiny rebellion against the larger dangers lurking outside. By midday, Luna appeared at the barn's edge, bearing scars of the night's struggle. Marisol met her gaze with steady calm. "You're safe here," she said. With soothing words, she coaxed Luna into the barnyard, where she collapsed onto soft straw. The pack circled, their loyalty unshaken by the snares of traps and human cunning. Jareth watched Luna's rhythmic breathing and felt a surge of protectiveness. He shifted uncomfortably on 3 legs, determined to stand guard even as pain radiated through his injured limb. Marlowe's boots crunched on gravel as he strode toward the barn. His hat cast a shadow over narrow eyes that measured every living thing as either prize or prey. He stopped at the threshold, surveying the scene. A wounded foal, a lame wolf dog, and a stable woman who dared shelter them both. "Quite the collection," he drawled, voice edged with contempt. "You're harboring fugitives, girl?" Marisol's muscles coiled, but she did not retreat. Instead, she met his gaze with unflinching resolve. "They aren't criminals," she said. "They're survivors." Marlowe sneered. "Survivors don't bark like a pack." He advanced, and Jareth bristled, a low growl deep in his throat. Echo rose to her feet, hackles rippling, and Luna snarled softly. Marisol stepped between them and Marlowe, tone firm but calm. "You'll have to go through me first." The stale wind carried a tremor of tension, human stubbornness pitted against wild loyalty. Marlowe paused, calculating risk and reward. His hand twitched toward a coil of rope hanging at his waist. "I think these beasts belong to me," he said. "Their value's in the auction block." A sharp bark burst from Jareth, part challenge, part plea, and Marisol's eyes flicked to him. She reached out, stroking his neck. "They belong to no one but themselves," she whispered. With that, she turned her back on Marlowe and led Luna and Echo further into the barn. Jareth followed, wobbling but resolute, heart-pounding defiance. Marlowe hesitated, his greed warred with caution. Finally, he spat on the ground and retreated, muttering promises of return. Inside the barn's dim corridor, lantern light danced against wooden beams. Marisol guided Jareth to a stall cushioned with fresh straw. She fastened the halter and tied the lead to a ring, ensuring he could not wander into danger. Jareth blinked, nostrils flaring at the sense of horses he had never met. One by one they approached, a gray mare with a silver star on her brow, a dappled gelding, and a sorrel colt who sniffed at Jareth as if greeting a long-lost sibling. Jareth's chest swelled with something he had rarely felt, belonging. Late that afternoon, Marisol slipped into Jareth's stall with a cloth soaked in herbal tonic. She cleaned his wound, humming a melody that vibrated through the boards. Jareth leaned into her touch, a gentle whinny replacing a bark for the first time in months. His eyelids drooped, exhaustion overtaking him. Marisol draped a blanket over his rump and stood. "Rest now," she said softly. "Tomorrow we'll see what we can do." Outside, the pack howled, a mournful song that spoke of broken packs and bonds unbroken. Marisol pressed a finger to her lips and one to Jareth's chest, as though sharing a secret heartbeat. Night settled again, heavy with promise and peril. In the yard, the fireflies flickered like harbingers of magic as Echo and Luna lay side by side, ears perked against the distant rumble of Marlowe's truck. Jareth drifted in and out of sleep, visions of running free through meadows alight with golden grass. He sensed, even in dreams, Marisol's presence, a steady beacon guiding him toward healing. By dawn's pale light, Marisol returned with 2 vials, one of clear serum and another of amber tincture. She injected the serum into Jareth's flank, and though he flinched, he did not struggle. Then she poured the tincture into his feed, murmuring encouragement. "This will help your leg," she explained, head bent close to his ear. "And this will ease your spirits." Jareth felt warmth bloom in his belly, not from hunger but from the comforting knowledge that someone saw him as more than a curiosity or a prize. He nickered, a full-throated sound that surprised them both. Outside, a figure emerged from the forest's edge, the bend of a rifle visible against his shoulder. Marlowe had returned under cover of mist, intent on reclaiming his bounty. He watched as Jareth drank, as Marisol whispered, as Luna and Echo circled protectively. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then Marlowe stepped forward, gun raised. A shout rang out, Tom, the stable hand, lunging between man and beast. The gun fired, the shot tearing through the crisp air, rattling hay in stalls. Chaos erupted. Jareth recoiled, terrified, but then something startled him. Luna's low growl, rich with warning, and Echo's fierce bark. They advanced on Marlowe, teeth bared. Marisol screamed, rushing to Jareth's side. Tom wrestled the gun upward, away from deadly aim. The bullet tore into the barn door, splinters flying like shards of ice. Marlowe staggered back, stunned, his face a mask of fury and fear. In that moment, Jareth made a choice. He planted his 3 good legs firmly in the straw and lowered his head, baring teeth in an equine snarl sheathed in lupin ferocity. His eyes blazed with resolve. Marlowe froze, confronted by a creature he could neither harness nor ignore. Marisol's voice rang out, clear and unwavering, "This is over." Her stance mirrored the foals, protectors standing guard over the wounded. Marlowe now realized he had underestimated the bond between horse and pack, between human and beast. He spat once more, dropping the rifle with a clang. Without a word, he turned and fled into the misty dawn, footsteps swallowed by the forest. The pack watched him go, heads lowered in wary triumph. Silence settled in the barnyard as echoes of adrenaline faded. Jareth trembled, legs quivering under the strain of emotion and pain. Marisol knelt beside him, wrapping her arms around his neck. He leaned in, shedding a single tear that fell onto her coat like warm rain. Luna and Echo pressed close, their breaths gentle assurances that he was not alone. That evening, a makeshift campfire blazed in the yard. Stable hands tended horses as Marisol cradled Jareth's head in her lap. She spoke softly of what tomorrow might bring. A search for farriers to mend his hoof, for trainers to teach him the language of the herd, for healers to tend Luna and Echo's scars. Jareth listened, each word weaving hope into his battered spirit. In the fire's glow, he glimpsed a future shaped not by traps and violence, but by compassion and partnership. As the flames danced higher, Jareth closed his eyes and dreamed of open horizons. He saw himself running free, once as dog and once as horse, finally becoming whole. The moon climbed overhead, and in its silver light he vowed to embrace both halves of his soul. The conflicts born of his divided heritage would become the forge of his strength. And when the dawn came again, he would stand ready to meet whatever trials lay ahead, because he had tasted fear, known despair, and found courage in the most unlikely of alliances. Thus, the stage was set for the trials to come, the complications that would test the limits of trust and the boundless capacity of the heart. And though the path ahead wound through shadow and flame, Jareth's spirit burned brightly, a beacon of resilience that no trap, rifle, or fear could ever extinguish. The early morning fog hung heavy over the valley as Jareth stirred in his stall, muscles aching but spirit aflame. The barn was quiet except for the faint rustle of straw and the steady breathing of Luna and Echo nearby. Marisol's silhouette moved with purpose outside, preparing the day's tasks. But beneath the calm, tension simmered. An unspoken reckoning was drawing near, one that would decide whether sanctuary was a fleeting dream or a new reality. Jareth flexed his injured leg, testing its strength. The pain was still sharp, but he no longer flinched at its sting. Over the days, Marisol's care had woven threads of healing through his body and soul. The bark in his voice had softened, replaced by tentative whinnies and nickered breaths of trust. Yet the wild, untamed fire within still flickered fiercely, reminding him who he was and what he had endured. As dawn cracked into day, a sudden noise shattered the fragile peace. A harsh crack echoed through the trees, followed by hurried footsteps and a chorus of angry shouts. Marisol's eyes widened, and she dashed toward the barn's entrance, her voice sharp. "They're back. Marlowe's men." The stable hands scrambled, closing gates and securing horses as shadows emerged from the mist, grim-faced men with ropes and weapons, their presence a dark stain on the soft morning light. Jareth's muscles coiled like springs, heart pounding in wild rhythm. He had hoped to avoid another confrontation, but fate had other plans. The pack stirred as well, Luna's growl low and menacing, Echo's hackles rising in defiance. Marisol stepped forward, planting herself between her horses and the intruders. "You won't take them," she declared, voice ringing with unwavering courage. "Not while I stand here." The men laughed cruelly, eyes gleaming with greed. "You think a woman and some mangy beasts can stop us?" one sneered. "We're here to collect what's owed." Tom, the stable hand, gripped a pitchfork, his knuckles white with resolve. The horses stamped anxiously, sensing the storm of violence brewing. Marlowe's voice cut through the chaos, a cold, commanding bark. "Capture them. All of them. No exceptions." The men surged forward, ropes swinging and boots pounding earth. Jareth reared, a primal scream tearing from his throat, half horse, half wolf, pure defiance. He charged, stumbling but relentless, knocking a man off balance. Luna and Echo flanked him, teeth flashing in the grim morning light. Marisol moved like a whirlwind, her hand steady as she grabbed a heavy lantern and swung it toward a man lunging at Luna. The glass shattered, flames licking into dry straw, sparks flying like fireflies in a sudden summer storm. Panic exploded among Marlowe's men as the fire grew, smoke thickening the air with acrid bitterness. Horses reared, eyes wild with fear, and the battle spilled into chaos. Amidst the confusion, Jareth spotted Marlowe near the barn's far edge, gun raised and eyes locked on Luna. Time slowed as the bullet tore through the haze, aimed to silence the silver mare forever. Jareth's breath caught, limbs pushing beyond pain as he lunged, intercepting the shot with a body that was neither fully horse nor fully dog, but fiercely determined. The bullet grazed Jareth's shoulder, searing flesh and drawing a ragged cry. Yet he did not falter. Luna twisted away, growling as she faced Marlowe down with blazing eyes. Echo circled, snarling threats. Marisol screamed, rushing to Jareth's side. She pressed a hand to the bleeding wound, voice trembling with desperation. "Hold on, Jareth. You're stronger than this." The world narrowed to the fire's crackle, the sharp scent of blood, and the heavy pounding of hearts entwined in the fight for survival. Marlowe advanced again, fury and fear battling behind his cold gaze. "This ends now," he snarled, stepping closer to Marisol. But before he could reach her, a sudden force slammed into him from behind. Tom, wielding a sturdy plank, knocked Marlowe off balance. The gun clattered to the ground. Jareth's muscles burned, legs shaking, but the rallying cry of the pack and Marisol's fierce love lent him strength. With a final, powerful surge he charged Marlowe, hooves pounding like thunder on shattered earth. Marlowe stumbled, eyes wide with terror as Jareth's muzzle closed in, a silent promise of reckoning. But at the last moment Marisol's voice stopped him. "No. Not like this." Breathing hard, Jareth reined back, eyes locking with Marisol's. She knelt, cupping his face, her voice a balm that soothed the firestorm within. "We don't become what they fear. We become what we hope for." The men, disarmed and shaken, slowly retreated under the weight of the pack's relentless presence. The smoke drifted upward, swirling into the pale sky like the spirits of freedom themselves. In the stillness that followed, Luna limped toward Jareth, her eyes soft with gratitude. Echo pressed close, her breath warm against his mane. Marisol stood, shoulders squared, looking out over the battered ground where blood and courage had mingled. "We're not safe yet," she said quietly. "But together we're unstoppable." Jareth lowered his head, a deep whinny rising from his chest, mingling with the wolf's howl that echoed across the valley. It was a song of survival, of scars worn like badges of honor, of a bond forged not by blood but by choice. As the sun broke fully free from the horizon, casting golden light on battered bodies and hopeful hearts, the wild foal who once barked like a dog stood ready, no longer broken but reborn. The battle was won, but the war for freedom was just beginning. And in the quiet moments before dawn's next breath, Jareth understood that true strength was not in the fight alone, but in the love that carried them through. The days following the harrowing clash unfolded slowly, as if the earth itself needed time to breathe again. The wounds, both seen and unseen, demanded patience and tender care. Marisol moved among the herd with renewed determination, her hands gentle yet firm as she tended to Jareth's healing shoulder. The once restless foal now bore the marks of battle not just on his body, but deep within his spirit. Yet, every flicker of pain was matched by a spark of resilience, a quiet refusal to yield. Jareth's eyes, once clouded with confusion and fear, now glimmered with a fierce clarity. He no longer barked in despair or confusion but whinnied softly, embracing the language of his true nature. The wildness in him was no longer a cage but a calling, a reminder of the freedom he was born to reclaim. Luna and Echo stood close, their presence steady and unwavering, as if to remind him he was never alone in this fight for survival and redemption. The small sanctuary they had carved out was fragile, perched on the edge of a world that threatened to swallow it whole. Yet within its boundaries, hope blossomed in the form of new friendships and quiet moments of peace. Marisol's voice became a steady anchor, her stories weaving tales of courage and survival that echoed through the stable walls. She spoke not just of battles fought, but of dreams nurtured, dreams of a life where wild hearts could run free without fear. Each morning as the sun spilled gold over the rolling hills, Jareth took tentative steps outside the safety of the barn. The grass beneath his hooves was no longer foreign but a homecoming, He stretched his legs, feeling strength return like a river swelling after winter's thaw. Luna nudged him gently, a silent promise of companionship, while Echo's bright eyes mirrored the hope kindling in Jareth's own soul. Marisol watched from the fence line, her heart swelling with pride and quiet relief. The wild foal who had once been raised by dogs, barking to mimic their calls, was transforming before her eyes. He was becoming what he was always meant to be, a symbol of resilience, courage, and the unbreakable bond between beings who choose love over fear. The world beyond the valley remained harsh, but here, among the wildflowers and whispering trees, a new story was being written. One where scars were not signs of defeat, but badges of survival, where freedom was not just an idea but a lived reality. Jareth's journey was far from over, but he faced the horizon with a heart unburdened by doubt. One afternoon, as the sky blushed with the soft hues of dusk, a distant whistle echoed through the valley. It was a call familiar and sweet, carried on the wind like a promise. Marisol's eyes lit up as she recognized the sound. The ranger, a protector from beyond, coming to offer aid and friendship. His arrival was a reminder that even in the darkest times, allies could be found in unexpected places. Jareth lifted his head, nostrils flaring as the scent of the ranger mixed with the earth and pine. He whinnied, a clear, strong note that carried across the fields, a greeting and a declaration. The wild foal was no longer lost between worlds. He was a bridge, between wilderness and human kindness, between fear and hope. Together they would face the challenges ahead, not as victims but as warriors of a new dawn. Marisol's hand rested on Jareth's neck, steady and warm, her smile soft but fierce. "We've come so far," she whispered, "and we have so much more to give." The bond forged in fire and fear had blossomed into something unbreakable, a family born not of blood but of heart. As twilight deepened and stars began to pierce the velvet sky, Jareth settled into the soft earth, his breath even and calm. Around him Luna and Echo curled close, guardians of a fragile peace. The journey had been brutal, the path uncertain, but redemption was no longer a distant dream. It was here, tangible and real. In that quiet moment, the wild foal who once barked like a dog closed his eyes and found rest. His story was no longer one of confusion and survival alone, but of belonging, love, and the enduring strength of the wild heart. The valley breathed with him, alive with promise, and the night whispered a vow that freedom once lost could always be reclaimed. And so, under the watchful eyes of moon and stars, a new chapter began, one of hope, healing, and the unyielding courage to be true to oneself no matter the odds.